Saturn, the most beautiful trap in the solar system. From Earth, Saturn does not look like a threat. It looks composed. The planet hangs in the dark with a kind of impossible balance, wrapped in rings so clean and bright that the whole thing feels less like a world and more like an idea someone had about perfection. Even through a small telescope, it has that effect on people. You expect brutality from a black hole. You expect violence from the sun. Saturn does something more dangerous. It makes you trust your own first impression. It looks calm, and that is exactly how it gets into your head. Because Saturn is one of the few places in the solar system that can still fool you with beauty long after you already know better. You can learn the numbers, read the papers, watch the simulations, memorize the chemistry, and it still does not fully protect you from that first emotional mistake. Part of you keeps wanting Saturn to be graceful in the way it appears graceful. Part of you keeps wanting those rings to mean elegance instead of destruction, stillness instead of motion, peace instead of scale. But if you were ever close enough to stop admiring it and actually enter it, that illusion would die very quickly. You would begin with the rings. From far away, they look solid, like giant polished bands laid carefully around the planet. Up close, they break apart into what they really are, an enormous swarm of ice, dust, shattered rock, and debris moving at terrifying speeds. There are particles no larger than smoke, and chunks as large as buildings and hills, all sharing the same vast system, all circling a planet that dominates everything beneath them. The structure is breathtaking, but it is not gentle. The rings are made of collisions. They are a beautiful arrangement of broken things. And below them, filling half the sky before you even realize how small you are, Saturn waits. This is where the scale starts to become physically unsettling. Saturn is so large that the human brain struggles to read it correctly. At a distance, you can appreciate the planet. Up close, you stop appreciating and start recalculating your place in the universe. The cloud tops stretch over a globe nearly 10 times wider than Earth. The horizon curves too slowly. The bands of color run around the planet like weather painted onto a rotating continent of gas. Nothing in the scene is familiar enough to comfort you. There is no land, no coastline, no mountain line, no sign that the world below you was ever built for arrival. And that matters, because Saturn has no true surface waiting for you. That is one of the hardest things for the imagination to accept. On Earth, every fall ends somewhere. Even in an ocean, there is a seabed. On Saturn, the old language begins to fail. You do not descend toward ground. You descend into increasing depth, increasing pressure, increasing loss of every condition your body depends on. The planet does not present a place to land. It takes you inward by degrees, and every degree is worse than the last. At first, the upper atmosphere might almost seem manageable from a distance. Pale yellows, faint browns, thin sunlight, layers of haze suspended over unimaginable depth. But the moment you actually enter, the mood changes. The air is no longer air in any human sense. Hydrogen and helium dominate the planet, and as you sink, those gases thicken around you, pressing harder, growing denser, more violent, more alien. The temperature profile shifts, the pressure climbs, visibility collapses. Any machine carrying you downward would begin fighting a battle it was designed to lose, and the wind never really lets you forget where you are. Saturn's atmosphere moves with absurd force. Jet streams tear around the planet at speeds that can exceed the strongest hurricanes on Earth. Whole weather bands race around the globe, while the planet itself spins so quickly that one Saturn day lasts only about 10.5 hours. That rapid rotation changes the planet's shape. Saturn bulges at the equator and flattens at the poles, as though its own speed is trying to pull it apart. Nothing about it is still. Even the calm-looking beauty you saw from Earth was already in motion, already under tension, already the visible skin of something restless and deep. If you kept falling, the experience would become less like weather and more like burial. The light would fade first, then the sense of direction, then the comforting illusion that what surrounds you is just cloud. The upper atmosphere gives way to deeper layers, where ammonia ice, water, and more complex chemistry begin to matter, where storms grow colossal, and lightning can flash inside cloud structures so immense they would swallow countries on Earth without anyone below seeing the edges. Somewhere in those depths, the atmosphere becomes thick enough, hot enough, and compressed enough that familiar distinctions stop behaving the way your instincts expect. Gas shades into fluid. Fluid shades into something harder to describe. Pressure becomes the dominant fact of existence. By then, the problem is no longer survival in the ordinary sense. It is that Saturn keeps replacing the very environment around you with conditions your species never evolved language for. People sometimes talk about gas giants as though they are empty worlds, soft worlds, worlds without resistance. That is an Earth habit. We associate danger with impact, with rock, with flame, with sharp edges. Saturn teaches a different lesson. A place does not need stone to destroy you. It can do it with depth alone. It can do it by pressing matter together until even the behavior of the elements begins to change. Far below the cloud tops, hydrogen is thought to enter forms that no human being has ever touched directly. Matter altered by such enormous pressure that the neat categories you learned in school start to look embarrassingly small. Deeper still, planetary models suggest helium may separate from the surrounding hydrogen and fall as rain. That sounds almost poetic until you remember where it is happening. This is not weather in any comforting sense. This is a giant world sorting itself in darkness, layer by layer, under forces so extreme that even the elegant word rain feels out of place. And somewhere in all of that, Saturn keeps one of its strangest expressions near the top, visible from above like a warning nobody fully deserves to understand on first sight. At the North Pole, the clouds form a hexagon, not an approximate shape, not a vague pattern the human mind wants to interpret as geometry. A real six-sided atmospheric structure on a planetary scale, rotating around the pole like an engineered thing. Scientists can describe it as a standing wave in a fast-moving jet stream, a product of fluid dynamics, rotation, and atmospheric conditions. The explanation is real. The shape is still unnerving. You are looking at weather, and weather is behaving like architecture. That is Saturn in one image. A world so alien that even when physics explains it, the nerves still reject it. The planet does not feel evil. That would make it too simple. Evil implies intent. Saturn does not need intent. It is worse than that. It is completely indifferent while also being perfectly capable of destroying anything that mistakes indifference for calm. If you entered this world, Saturn would not notice you, would not resist you, would not pursue you. It would simply continue being itself while your machinery failed around you and every familiar condition disappeared one after another. That is what makes the descent frightening. Not spectacle alone, not even violence alone. It is the realization that Saturn does not have to act against you. Its ordinary state is already incompatible with your existence. And yet, the planet is not frightening only because of what lies below its clouds. Part of the unease comes from how much life and mystery its gravity has gathered around it. Saturn does not sit alone. It presides. Its moons are not just satellites. They are like chapters in a larger story about what cold worlds can hide when enough time and pressure are involved. Titan is the first great shock. It is larger than the planet Mercury, wrapped in a thick orange atmosphere, with rivers, lakes, rain, dunes, and weather systems of its own. From orbit, it looks muted and secretive, a moon concealed behind haze. On the ground, it is one of the most haunting places we have ever touched. The liquids there are not water, but methane and ethane. The pebbles may be water ice, frozen so hard it behaves like rock. The landscape feels familiar, only in outline, as if Earth had been remade from the wrong chemistry and left out in deep freeze. Then there is Enceladus, smaller and brighter, almost easy to overlook until you learn what is trapped under its crust. Beneath that frozen shell lies a global ocean. From fractures near the South Pole, water vapor and ice grains erupt into space in towering plumes. A moon venting material from a hidden sea into the vacuum. A bright little world carrying darkness beneath it. Of all the places near Saturn, Enceladus may be one of the most important because it suggests something extraordinary, that habitable environments do not always need sunlight, continents, or open skies. Some of them may exist under ice, sealed away, warmed by tidal stress, waiting where nobody once thought to look. So Saturn becomes larger than a planet. It becomes a system of beautiful threats and buried possibilities, of dead ice, active oceans, hydrocarbon rain, orbital debris, and ancient impacts. Every moon around it seems to push the story in a different direction. Some look ruined, some look dormant, some look unfinished. Together they make Saturn feel less like a single object and more like a whole regime of cold physics acting over billions of years. That is one reason humanity became obsessed with it so early. When Galileo first turned a telescope toward Saturn in the 17th century, he could not make sense of what he saw. The planet seemed to have strange appendages, as though something stood on either side of it. He was looking at the rings without having the optical power to understand them. Later observers saw more clearly, and once the rings were recognized for what they were, Saturn changed forever in the human imagination. It stopped being merely one more wandering light in the sky. It became the solar system's great exception, the planet that looked designed. For a long time, that was enough. We watched from a distance and let the mystery grow. Then, we sent machines. Pioneer 11 rushed past Saturn and showed us that the old icon was real terrain for science, not just for reverence. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 deepened that reality. The rings were more complex than expected. The atmosphere was more dynamic. The moons were more varied. The farther we looked, the less Saturn behaved like a simple symbol. It became a changing, active place, full of systems inside systems. But Cassini was the mission that truly entered Saturn's world. For 13 years, Cassini lived there. It orbited the giant, crossed the ring plane, studied the atmosphere, mapped the moons, watched storms bloom and fade, measured fields and particles in chemistry, and transformed Saturn from a distant marvel into one of the best observed planetary systems in human history. And then there was Huygens, the probe Cassini carried to Titan. That descent remains one of the most eerie achievements in space exploration. A human-built machine falling through thick orange haze onto the surface of a moon almost 1 billion miles from Earth, landing among channels and rounded ice stones under a sky no human lungs could ever use. That single moment changed the emotional meaning of Saturn's system. It was no longer only something we looked at. For a brief time, we were inside it. Cassini's greatest gift was not just data, it was intimacy. It showed the ring system in exquisite detail, revealing structure, disturbance, gaps, shepherding moons, and fine textures that made the rings feel alive with motion. It flew through the plumes of Enceladus and tasted material from an ocean hidden under ice. It watched Saturn through the long patience of orbital science, seeing the planet not as a frozen icon, but as a place with seasons, storms, and change over time. And then, at the end, Cassini gave Saturn one final scene worthy of the planet. When the mission was nearing its end, engineers and scientists made a decision shaped by both caution and respect. Some of Saturn's moons, especially Titan and Enceladus, were too important to risk contaminating. If there was even a small chance that microbial hitchhikers from Earth could someday reach one of those worlds on a dead spacecraft, the mission could not simply be abandoned in a careless orbit. So Cassini was sent inward. It passed through the gap between Saturn and the rings, diving again and again through a region no spacecraft had explored before, gathering data all the way. Then, in 2017, it entered Saturn's atmosphere and burned. It did not fall because we lost control of it. We ended it that way on purpose. There is something almost mythic about that final act, a machine built to study Saturn disappearing into Saturn, consumed by the world it spent years revealing to us. Not wasted, returned. The planet kept the witness. And even after all of that, Saturn still carries one last quiet sadness inside its beauty. The rings will not last forever. They feel eternal because human lives are short and planetary systems are not. But the rings are changing. Material is slowly being lost. Tiny particles are pulled inward by gravity and electromagnetic effects, feeding what researchers call ring rain into the planet below. The masterpiece is temporary. Saturn's most iconic feature is not a permanent crown, but a phase. That changes the picture in a way you can feel. The planet is no longer just majestic, it is majestic in passing. What we see now may be Saturn at one of the most visually spectacular moments in its long history. There were ages before these rings looked the way they do, and there may be ages after they fade into something thinner, dimmer, or almost gone. The image that feels timeless to us may actually be a brief condition in the life of a giant world. Maybe that is why Saturn stays with people more stubbornly than other planets do. Jupiter is more violent. Neptune is farther and stranger in its own way. Venus is more immediately hellish. But Saturn has a more unsettling talent. It hides the abyss behind elegance. It lets you fall in love with the outline before it forces you to reckon with the substance. From Earth, it is the masterpiece of the solar system. Up close, it becomes a place of pressure, darkness, speed, and fatal depth. And the transition between those two impressions is what gives Saturn its power. It teaches you how unreliable beauty can be at cosmic scale. If you ever descended into Saturn, there would be no dramatic impact, no heroic touchdown, no final moment where your boots meet alien ground and the scene stabilizes. You would keep sinking through layers of gold and shadow, through violence disguised as atmosphere, through chemistry that grows more hostile the deeper it closes around you. The rings above would shrink into a thin blade of light. The sky would disappear. Instruments would fail. The planet would go on deepening beneath you, as though depth itself were the only surface it ever intended to offer. And somewhere in that descent, you would understand why Saturn is so hard to forget. Not because it is simply beautiful. A lot of things in the universe are beautiful. Not because it is merely deadly. Deadly things are common. Saturn lingers because it joins those two facts so perfectly that separating them becomes impossible. The beauty is not painted over the danger. The beauty is part of how the danger works. It draws you in first. It lowers your guard. It lets your imagination approach with reverence, and only then does the science catch up and show you what was really there all along. A giant world with no mercy, no landing place, and no need to hate you in order to erase you. So we keep looking at it from far away, where the rings still seem delicate and the planet still seems serene. And maybe distance is the only reason that word survives. Serene. Because from inside Saturn, that illusion would be the first thing to die.